Hello, everybody. Happy July. Yay. I'm here with Tom and Tamara again. We're going to be digging into some of the new updates in the Office 365 roadmap. Jen is preoccupied today, so again was unfortunately able to join us. But we're going to start off the show by saying huge congrats. Jen was named Regional Director for Microsoft, which is a wonderful accomplishment. We're all really, really proud of her, and it's very much deserving. So if you guys hadn't heard, feel free to congratulate her. And again, very, very awesome, and we're very excited for her.
Yay.
So getting into the normal updates, that was an awesome yay. So getting into the normal updates, as always, guys, we're going to kind of go through some of the new changes in the Office 365 roadmap. We're going to start with in development, go to rolling out, finish with launched, and then I guess we technically have one canceled or two canceled today that we may mention. But a lot of cool stuff coming out, a lot of new stuff added to the roadmap that we have to talk about. So it should be a good week, and we can kind of talk about where the future's going. So we can go ahead and start off in development. Tamara, is there anything you wanted to kind of grab from the get-go?
Yes, Microsoft Teams large gallery view. See up to 49 participants. So it's going to be a 7x7 screen, and it's just rolling out. And actually, this rolled out in, it showed up in my client, and it was like, it had a thing that said large gallery, and then it was like a bunch of photos, but then it still had the regular gallery going on. So I was a little confused. I hope they get that worked out. But it'll be good. A lot of people want to be able to see everybody on the call, and so I think we're getting closer to that.
Yeah, I've seen several articles, like news articles, right? It's like not really tech articles, but like, like the random news articles that like show up on my like Google or whatever, and they're like, "This is gonna be a Zoom killer" and stuff like that. I'm specifically talking about the large gallery view. Tom, would you like to talk about anything?
Yeah, it's really funny because I was pointing out to Adam earlier that Adam tends to take the geeky admin-y things, and this whole roadmap is just like Adam could talk for an hour because everything seems to be geeky admin-y stuff. But one of the only other things I had highlighted in development that sounded good for me was in Microsoft Teams, they're doing language-aware proofing, which I think is really interesting. So if you do a lot of communication in multiple languages in Teams, it will start to recognize, oh, you're composing a message in French or Spanish, and it will start giving you spell checking in those languages, where normally it would just sit there and look at you and probably put little squirrely lines under everything because like, well, this ain't English. I don't know what's going on here. So I think that's going to be really cool and really help if you're dealing with a lot of multilingual audience bases that you're communicating with. So looking forward to seeing that one a lot.
Yeah, the couple customers I've worked with that have multiple languages that exist inside of their collaboration platforms, I've always heard that complaint that if they're writing in the other language, everything is considered spelled wrong. And so, like, essentially, spell check is not only worthless, it's almost distracting.
It's annoying.
Because, like, yeah.
So that was really about it for me.
Yeah, as Tom said, there's a whole bunch of nerdy, geeky admin stuff. I'm going to cover some of the high-level ones that I think are cool. I'm probably not going to talk about everything. If you want to look at the full roadmap, you definitely can. But I'm sure we'll be seeing trimmers of these throughout the next couple of weeks, obviously, as it progresses down the list of where the features are. But a couple ones I thought was really cool. So Microsoft Information Protection, which is rebranded Information Rights Management, which is rebranded Azure Information Protection, the route they go. They're bringing EDM for government cloud. So EDM is a pretty cool concept. It stands for Exact Data Match. And it's basically a way to make your searches for sensitive or certain information more correct or more accurate. So for organizations that are really worried about leaking certain types of information, EDM basically makes it so that you're much more positive that what you're flagging is an actual match of the data. One of the most common things, I don't know if anyone's ever tried to do this, but if you ever decide like you have a customer or you decide you want to block like driver's license numbers, like 80% of what it finds is not driver's license numbers because it's basically like any like 8 or 10 digit number, whatever it is. It's like, oh no, driver's license number. And it's just kind of like, well, I have 10 numbers together fairly often in my giant organizational data. That's not a driver's license number. EDM is specifically a tool that's supposed to make your matches much more accurate to what you're going through and doing. They're doing several things with this too. They also have a string base that gets added to the search called SALT. I'm not going to go too much into how it works, but it's basically basically a way to add into the data hashing of when it's going through and looking for EDM matches and MIP, that by having this string associated with it, it makes it a lot harder to reverse engineer. So if someone's trying to get around it or trying to be malicious or trying to go through and find stuff, the string being associated with the EDM basically makes that process much harder to figure out without violating the authenticity of the actual matches that they're trying to do. I was
going to say, I'm looking forward to the 100 million rows, because one of the things that we do with a third-party tool for checking these things is we have our entire member list with all the member IDs out there. And one of the reasons why our InfoSec group didn't want to fully commit to Microsoft's offerings in this area is there really wasn't an exact data match feature that was going to work for us to put all the subscriber IDs in there and check based on that. This, I think, may be something that they'll want to look at and see, is this meaning we can get rid of one more third-party tool and bring everything that's integrated throughout the entire Microsoft 365 environment?
Yeah, and what Tom was speaking to is basically with this EDM rollout, they can basically support files that have 100 million rows. So if you're in Excel and you just have a giant file, you can still parse through it, which is actually kind of crazy. Like, I can't even really conceptualize 100 million rows of data. Like the idea of it is just crazy to me. But Microsoft now has the power through machine learning and automation and stuff to actually be able to go through and quantify that, which is really cool. A couple other ones I'm going to throw out there that, again, I'm sure we'll dig into later. Data loss prevention for GCC High and GCC and DoD is coming to Teams. So one of the things that hasn't been that concerning before is you couldn't share information in Teams externally, right? You couldn't go through and have other users. This is prep work, really, for getting to the point that they're going to start doing some stuff in Azure B2B to allow different people to have different information shown and shared, but you'll basically be able to apply DLP policies on top of Teams too. So going through and it will look to see, make sure you're not, sharing information you shouldn't in Teams channels and stuff like that. That could potentially be easier to be violated. It's one thing if you go through and you put robust policies around protecting the data in SharePoint, but if your users are just flinging that stuff left and right in the channels, it's maybe not as secure, right? So some cool stuff around that. There's some other things too that I'm not going to get into today, but some cool Intune features around endpoint analytics, which is basically just data, giving you more information around what's going on with the actual machines and the mobile devices that you have in Intune. I expect to see more of that coming along the pipeline, but I'm going to go ahead and not go too uber nerdy on all the and development. We'll stop with some of those updates for now, unless you guys have anything else you'd want to add.
The only one I want to add is the Visio one.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Diagrams. I think this is great because you can link shapes in your diagrams by adding hyperlinks to web pages or other files stored online, and pages within the same Visio file and email addresses to make your diagrams interactive with richer information, which I think makes it so much easier to share the Visio diagram as a whole product on its own without having to sit there and explain to somebody.
Yeah.
It comes as kind of the full meal deal.
That's good observation there.
Yeah, that would be good. It makes Visio more of instead of a supplemental tool for explanation, it makes it more of a deliverable in the sense that you can put it together and provide that as hey, this will give you what you need, and you can have the links inside of the diagrams and stuff that point out the information that you need, which is definitely pretty cool.
Also, kind of makes it kind of PowerPoint-ish in nature, where you can actually use it as an image or something that you can send out to others and have those links built in. So cool stuff.
I have tried to shove way too much information into a Visio diagram, and it doesn't help anybody. The text is so tiny, you're looking at it with a magnifying glass. It just doesn't help.
You're taking one of those text fields that they're really intending for titles, and you have 4 sentences, and you're just like, come on, it'll be fine.
It's a paragraph.
All right, so
that's all I had.
Tom, you good too?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, cool. Well, moving on to rolling out. Tom, I'll let you take the honors for this one.
Okay, my top 2. I had a few more than I did in development, but the top 2 that I have, one is in Microsoft Planner. They're going to be syncing the Message Center post to Planner if you care to. So if you get these Message Center posts, usually there's something at the bottom that says, what action do you need to take? Do you just need to update your documentation, blah, blah, blah? And when is this due? you can kind of keep track of all that manually, but hey, we've got Planner. So what'll happen is when it arrives in the message center, it can say, okay, is there action? Who needs to take responsibility for that? Do you need to track it to completion? Do you want to make a note, tag it later? You can start doing this kind of work with syncing your message center to Microsoft Planner. So instead of you having to copy and paste and put it over here and in a spreadsheet and the whole bit, you can just use Planner really what it's for. And that is this nice lightweight tool to keep track of tasks and things that need to be done. So I'm looking forward to that. I've seen it over the last many months be talked about, but now I see this finally rolling out, which makes me really happy. The other one that I like is for Outlook on the web, they're now going to be rolling out text predictions. So if you're used to using Gmail, especially if you're on your phone, you'll start to say, I know I can, and it may fill in the rest, do this without your help or something like that. And all you need to do is hit a tab and you get all that text filled in automatically. Well, now Outlook on the web is going to be doing that same kind of prediction. So if it fills in part of the sentence, you like what it is, boom, you hit tab, you're on to the next sentence or the next phrase. If you don't like it, you just keep typing. So
I use that for the mobile for like Outlook for iOS.
yeah.
I use it fairly often.
Yeah, because my thumbs are so fat, I end up.
Well, it's really nice too. Like like for me, it's not that uncommon that like I'll send out stuff towards the end of the day, or someone will respond to something, and like literally, I just want to say like, okay, thanks, or like great, right? That type of automatic responses, and they're fairly intuitive too. The one for Outlook iOS, I assume it will be the same for OWA. Like it can judge the tone of what the other person is saying, and like fairly often it'll be responsive like, okay, I'll follow up on that later, or I'll check with you tomorrow or something, and like understands that if it's not closed. And I think that's pretty cool. I actually do use it fairly often, so I'll take all the intelligence to make me more lazy I can get.
You betcha. That's about it for me on the rolling out pieces.
Tamara?
Sure. SharePoint. Enable modern communication site experience on classic sites. So all those people who have migrated now from SharePoint 2010 up until, into SharePoint Online, they want that newer, richer experience, but don't want to have to rebuild everything. So now using a PowerShell script, admins can now enable the modern communication site experience on any classic team site, including root sites. So I think that's a big win. And then the other one that I was looking at is the fact in Microsoft Teams, live captions is going live for the GCC tenants, which is going to be great because then it'll get us closer to ADA compliance.
Cool. Yeah, that PowerShell enabling the modern communication site experience, being that we just did a migration of hundreds and hundreds of sites that were all coming over as classic. It'll be interesting to see how this looks. If we run this on a site, what does it do to the home page? Those are the kind of things we're going to have to play around with, but I think we may end up using that one quite a bit.
There were two for me that I thought were cool. One of them was really not that nerdy, but I've had to deal with this before, and I thought it was just nice to have. So they have it classified as updates to Office.com in the Office app launcher. But if you read into the details, what it basically is doing is it's going to make the app launcher and the stuff that you see when you log into Office 365 or Office.com more specific to you and more customizable. So you're going to have the ability to pin stuff, whether it be manually, which we always had, or to unpin stuff. So there's stuff in there that you don't use and you just want to simplify your view, you can. But it's also, this is the part I really liked, they're going to start automatically pinning stuff that you use. So I've actually gone through and developed custom apps and stuff like that and had clients that have done that stuff where we went through and created an Azure app and basically made it as a tile that you could click on, right? You could even like have a specific SharePoint site you want people to go to that you could create as a tile. But to do that, you then had to go in and manually pin it to people's system to get it to go through and use. And I've worked with customers that had like, oh, well, we have this time reporting thing. We want to make it so that users, have their landing page on Office 365, have a button they can click on to go do their time reporting so they don't have to remember a URL or anything. And so say you create that and the user goes through and visits that app a couple times, Microsoft will automatically add it to their launcher because it's clearly something that they're using with regularity. So rather than you having to teach your users how to manually go through and pin it, which is what I was doing like 4 years ago when I was doing this, is like writing documentation, just begging the users, hey, here's how you go through and you pin a new app. It'll actually start doing it automatically, which I thought was cool. The other thing that I thought was actually really neat, this gets my compliance heart pumping in very good ways. So Office 365 DLP is now going to treat files as sensitive until they can classify them. So this was always one of the things that I had to discuss with customers and was worried about with audits. So when we're talking about all the different regulatory compliances that we can be, sometimes you have to pass audits for it, right? So you can go through and you can set DLP policies to say, I don't want to allow credit cards to leave my system. I don't want to allow HIPAA information to leave my system, stuff like that. But it takes time to crawl data, especially when you're talking about new files that have been uploaded and stuff like that. So from the time that you upload it into your system to the time that data is crawled, if you have automatic labeling in place, you worry, well, what happens between that, right? Take someone like Tom who works in the healthcare industry. Someone could go and upload a new file that had, patient records on it, and if they didn't perhaps put it in the right section of SharePoint where he has it so it's automatically going and applying labels, that could basically go through and then make it so that data is exposed just because they put it in the wrong location. So this new behavior is basically going to come out and say, well, because I haven't had the time to scan it, my default behavior is to basically say that this isn't accessible. I'm not going to allow it to be shared externally. And then once I crawl it and can verify, oh yeah, there's no patient information here, there's no HIPAA violations, then I'll allow it to follow whatever I put it in a SharePoint site that's publicly accessible to external people. Well, once I've crawled it and know that it's okay, I'll allow that to be the case. But the default posture is going to be of caution. And I think that this is a feature that's going to be amazing for compliance audits and stuff. If you can show, hey, look, we've set up our system the way that we want, but we even have this in place to safeguard for when our employees mess up. I think that's a really, really cool thing and will go a long way in reassuring an auditor who's coming in that you're doing what you can to ensure that sensitive information isn't leaving your organization, which is just, again, like I work a lot in the compliance and security industry now. This is really cool to me because it's solving a problem that I always worried about and always had to have conversations about, and it's such a simple fix, but it's one that I think makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Sounds good.
Anyone have anything else?
Nope.
All right, cool. We're just moving right along then. Let's go ahead and go into launched. And Tamara, we'll go back to you for the start of this one.
Sure. One thing that I think is interesting is expiry notifications within the Office 365 Group's applications. So no longer is email the only way to tell people that this stuff is getting ready to expire. It'll now pop up within the application where the person is actually working, where they have a much better chance of actually seeing the notification than just having another no reply email in their inbox.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be nice. If you think about all the different applications that are integrated with groups, that basically covers across the board of what most people use day in and day out. Forefront of that is Teams, right? So that'll be really good. Tom?
So a lot of the stuff in launch are things that we've talked about in the past. It looks like there might have been a little cleanup being done here. I could hit about 5 different Teams ones, but I'm going to stick with the 2 SharePoint ones out there, just so you know for sure that they're available now. SharePoint Lists from Excel. If you have an Excel spreadsheet and you want to turn it into a list, it's now possible to say, hey, I want to create a new custom list. I want to do it from Excel. You point it to the Excel file, and it used to be you'd get that in SharePoint 2010 and you're done. Now you have to clean up all the stuff, and as a result, I hardly ever used it. Well, now what it does is it shows you all the data. It guesses at the top of the display before you actually create the list, what are the particular formats of that data? Is it text? Is it number? Is it whatever? You can clean all that up beforehand. You can remove the columns you don't want. And then once you have the list looking the way you want it to, you basically click OK and boom, it creates the new list, populates it. Everything's great. I love this feature. It should all be rolled out to you now. Definitely take a look at it if you're creating new lists and they're coming from Excel. The other one that I think is kind of cool is that they have something, I love the name of it, the shy header for modern SharePoint sites and websites. So usually a lot of times you can have a large header on the top, and if you're scrolling up and down, that's a lot of the things that you have to worry about. Well, now when you scroll, it will basically shrink the header at the top of the screen. So it's going to maximize the space below that, which a lot of times we'll call below the scroll. There'll be less below the scroll now, because as you're scrolling up, you're going to get more real estate that you can see stuff in. So I think that'll be a way to help users see the content that really matters without having to scroll all over the place.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Tom here on the sense of where the updates came from. There's a ton of stuff that is even bookmarked for release at the end of last year. I think this is cleanup of stuff that finally got rolled out, most of which we've talked about. Two in particular that I saw that I thought was kind of cool and probably worth noting. First and foremost, I thought this was really awesome if anyone's ever had to do this. They have launched the ability to add distribution lists in modern groups for Office 365 groups to scheduled meetings and Teams. If you were scheduling a meeting through Teams before and you went to the people picker, it was literally only people. And a lot of people I know, Tamara's screaming yes because she's gone through the same experience as me. We have groups all over our organization. So you want to go through and you want to invite your whole team to a meeting, you can just find what your team name is and you're good. But that didn't work in Teams for the longest time. So you had to individually go in and invite every individual user. And it made it fairly annoying. Now, Outlook could still do this, but you basically, for me, meant I just didn't schedule anything through Teams because, like, it was annoying to not have to do that. And which was kind of a non-immersive experience. I did everything else in Teams, but when I'd go to schedule the meeting, I'd have to minimize and go back to Outlook because it just couldn't do it. So happy to see that coming along. It'll make it so you can kind of follow the traditional, like, Teams is the one-stop shop for your productivity and collaboration. So definitely excited to see that one come out. The other one I'll point out too, and I think that this one is something that is cool, but maybe not necessarily the most life-changing when you go through and you look at it. As you're looking at all the things that have come out, company branding in Yammer. So I'm not a huge fan of Yammer. I haven't used it a ton. I know some people out there, and I've worked with some organizations that are, however, and one of the top most requested features is Yammer is supposed to be this internal social network for us to be able to use to collaborate with people. And there's only certain things you can change. So what they're basically doing is almost all the interactive pieces of Yammers, the labels, the messages that come out, you'll be able to add custom company branding on. So if you really want it to be like, this is the true immersive experience of Company X, and everything you go and see is Company X related, so it really looks like your own internal social network, they're basically just bringing more customization features. Now, again, Yammer's not my cup of tea, but I do know that this has been a largely and for long requested feature to bring more customization across the board to Yammer to add in your own branding. So seeing that come out, I'm sure some people will be really excited about it.
Cool.
Anyone else have anything they want to talk about and launched?
I'm okay with what we've covered, Tamara.
Two things real quick. There's now music on hold for Microsoft Teams. So you can dance while you're on hold. So I thought that was a nice feature. And then when you're scheduling a meeting in Teams, I'm assuming it's a live meeting here, that the organizer can now denote who is going to be presenters and who are going to be attendees when they're setting it up, as opposed to this hokey, now I get this link and I send that in an email to the attendees, or I send it as a meeting invite to attendees where it's all separate. Now it's going to all be together.
Yeah, no, which is definitely cool. I think we've all done, like, project presentation or sales calls or something where it's like, well, one person's presenting something on a PowerPoint, but there's 4 people that are helping out, and maybe they don't realize they need to change the slide because they're talking. Like, having multiple people just predetermined, oh, these are the people that have the ability to control stuff, will definitely make it easy. So there's 2 things listed and canceled today. both of them are either duplicates or have been replaced, so they're really not worth mentioning because neither of them are going away. They're just going to be seen in other areas or, collapsed into another area as well. So for the most part, you can just act like there's nothing in canceled, but we did want to call it out that there's technically 2 listed. So,
well, I thought it was funny because one of the items that was canceled was the Microsoft Teams 7x7 view in meetings. I'm like, so you gave it to us in development and you're taking it away down and canceled. But they said, no, this is basically a duplicate. So they were just consolidating into a single one. But I found it amusing when we first looked at it.
You're like, no, why is it canceled? Oh, okay.
Oh.
But yeah, no, guys, so that was the updates. Like I said, a lot of cool new things coming. I'm sure some of the stuff that we didn't get to today and in development, we will continue to talk about over the next couple of weeks. A lot of cool admin-y things related to security and compliance, some cool graphs and Teams features coming out. So just excited to see that they really seem to be hitting the stride. It seemed like for several weeks there, most of what we were covering was small things that were coming out, and we kind of thought coronavirus was impacting that. I think it's been enough time now that the teams at Microsoft are kind of back to full stride and probably used to working from home or whatever is involved with it. Right. So excited to see some of the speed picking back up on some of these roadmap updates. And yeah, we'll be sure to keep you guys informed throughout the coming weeks. So thank you for joining us. I hope everyone stays safe out there and hopefully enjoys their July 4th weekend socially distanced and wearing a mask.
There you go. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye now.